Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salam, hello, peace to you all. Welcome to the program, another edition, episode 7 of Iran versus the Epstein Empire, also known as Axis of Resistance against the Epstein Empire. I'm hearing some sound, actually. Oh, okay.
I think Indi turned a fan on.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, so we've got all kinds of things going on, but welcome everyone to the stream. Let's see, what's our title? From strategic patience to strategic victory, with patience scratched out, totally gone, no more patience. We're all very impatient now, and strategic victory. So we'll probably talk a little bit about how we think things stand. But let me welcome, in this collaborative episode with my friends, colleagues, comrades, the co-hosts of Resistance is Fertile. We have Benji. Benji, it's great to see you. Welcome.
Welcome, guys.
And Indi is here. Indi, great to see you again.
Yeah, tell me if my sound is okay. I got kicked out of my room. Sorry, I'm in a new setup.
You're in a new space, which has a cool globe behind you. So you're ready to pontificate about geopolitics because you can just swirl it around and say, look at this, look at where Iran is. And
It's
so
actually
that's
a
going to be
closet. My wife just put me in a closet.
Not being an EU politician, he can probably place Iran on the map.
I'd say your sound is a little low. You could boost your sound, I think.
Okay, tell me now. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Okay. And then we said we might have a special mystery guest who actually moonlit in the chat the other day. So we knew we had an in with him. So we thought we would bring him in for one of these episodes where, our regular contributor, Dave Ugubian, taking a little sabbatical, as professors need to do sometimes, from it. And so we have Justin Podur from Anti-Empire Project. Justin, welcome. It's great to see you.
Good to be here. Instead of trolling, I'm on the screen.
Now you're
inside the tent pissing out rather than outside pissing in. That's the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, so the crew is here. I thought maybe we would just start, and also welcome to all of you. And I see a lot of people in the chat. It's great to have you with us. Please do remember to like the stream so it gets a little bit of a boost. Share it if you can on social media. If you're watching on X, which you can do on several X accounts, on mine at Adnan A. Hussein, Indies, Benji's, if you're on those, you can retweet it. Very simple. That's all you have to do. And otherwise, if you're on the YouTube, you can also watch it on Substack. So resistanceisfertile.substack.com.
One of the few Substacks that's 100% free. So don't hesitate to also subscribe. We have lots of great content all the time.
Exactly. So subscribe and help boost it and get it to more people. Don't be miserly with a good thing. This is a good thing to get us together. So bring in others. And also, just as a reminder, we have been doing a Ramadan fundraiser for the Samir Project's Ramadan campaign. And last I checked, right before the start of the show, it was at 462,010 British pounds. Their goal for this campaign is 500,000. They've boosted it to 550. They're very confident. So 550, and there's only a few days left. There's 2, maybe 3 days. For some people 3, but 2 days left for most people. So be generous. I've put the link in the chat, and we'll check in with that a little bit later. But to get to the matters at hand, every day it's just there's so much to process, and we've had a few days since the last time we spoke on Saturday. I thought maybe we should go ahead and start with probably the most significant. Well, we'll see how significant we think it is. Obviously, very meaningful and important. The assassination and martyrdom of Ali Larijani, who was the head of the National Security Council, a diplomat, politician, and a scholar, as we've come to learn, a Kant scholar. So this happened. It seemed like he tweeted it just a couple of days. He had a very active X account. In fact, I think last Saturday, I recommended his X account because in addition, to him providing news and insight from leadership in the Islamic Republic of Iran, he had a good sense of humor and seemed to like the combat and the battle, and seemed to be interpreting a lot of statements, responding to statements by U.S. officials, administration, including Trump, and he would say interesting, funny, and acerbic things. I hate to say that is what, may have, but I feel like he was doing a lot of public diplomacy. One of the last things he did was actually publish a really interesting, we might talk about it, interesting kind of letter to all the Muslim countries. And I feel like in some ways that also may have increased the target upon him. So we might talk about all those things, but I just wondered what you all had to say at the outset about his martyrdom.
Well, this was, like many of the leaders of Iran, a philosopher, soldier. Ali Larijani was a Kant scholar who published a number of essays on the philosophy of mathematics in Kant. And of course, Kant was known for the categorical imperative, the project of eternal peace, and this idea that we should do unto others things that, if they became universal law, that everybody did them, then would be beneficial to the whole of humanity. And in a strange way, I think what the empire has done, as it does every time, is it has pushed the axis of resistance to be less Kantian, let's just say, and maybe more vengeful in a sense. And you mentioned his Twitter account, and on March the 13th, so he was a prime shit poster, regular listeners to our show will know that I believe that because we are all drafted against our will, most often in a 24/7 narrative battle, shitposting on social media is actually a very effective weapon, especially against an empire that's kind of retreated into some kind of solipsistic narcissism in which it only sees its own reflection and its own ego. So everything that punches the ego of white empire is actually weapons grade ammunition in the psychological war. And Ali Larijani himself was a commodore in the what I call the shitposting brigades of the free people of the world. And on March the 13th, he wrote to Pete Hegseth, the alcoholic crusader, Mr. Hegseth, our leaders have been and still are among the people, but your leaders on Epstein's island. And this really shows the contrast between white empire that has literally devolved into a bunch of, baby bothering, human jerky eating criminals, cod, in my view, cosplaying Satanist, and philosopher soldiers in the shape of the axis of resistance leaders who were all extremely learned people, whether they be Martyr Larijani, Martyr Khamenei, Martyr Said Nasrallah, of course, and Martyr Yahya Sinwar. So I think it's very significant. We should, of course, honor the martyrs, but the way things go is, as you kill martyrs, you just you make the ground of resistance more fertile, and this is the big difference. And by going against the leaders, they are actually making the people rise. And we'll probably talk about, we have already before, the way this popular defense is organized. It makes absolutely no difference on the military front, but this empire has just does always the same stuff. And the good news is Iran won't put out AI videos of leaving Larijani meeting with Tupac. So that's my first impression of what happened. Oh, just one last thing. He said he was amongst the people, and indeed he was killed with his son at his daughter's house. So he really was, throughout his life until the last minute, he stayed amongst the people, which none of the leaders of the axis of Epstein could ever do.
Yeah, the sad fact is that if you're in the resistance, you often get to write your own obituary. So this is something that Larijani wrote off Sri Lanka, when they basically sucker punched an unarmed Navy ship, and I killed I think 80 people, and those bodies were recently repatriated from Sri Lanka to there. And on that occasion, he said, "The martyrdom of the brave warriors of the Navy of the Islamic Republic in Dana is part of the sacrifices of the valiant nation, which has emerged in this era of struggle against international oppressors. Their memory will always remain in the heart of the Iranian nation, and these martyrdoms will strengthen the foundation of the Islamic Republic Army for years, within the structure of the armed forces. I ask Almighty God for the highest ranks for these dear martyrs." And I think you can ask for the same for Larijani. There's this... You can see, like, let's say Netanyahu is dead or alive. Like, they obviously fear death. They obviously fear martyrdom, and they obviously hide. So you don't see anybody in the highest ranks of empire, in America especially, dying. And there's this saying, like, among the resistance that, like, you love life and we love death. Adnan can correct me. I don't think that's translated quite correctly. It's more that every faith says that there's some afterlife, which is more important than this one. And in Islam, it says this is, like, God will ask you how long you've been here for, and you'll be like, oh, it was a day. It's nothing. Even in Buddhism, in Hinduism, there's this idea of, like, there's a more important life, a higher purpose than this. And some people live for that higher purpose. And their death here is but the passing of a day. And I believe in something bigger than this. And I don't know if I believe in God, but I fear them. And if I was Larijani, I would go to my death with nothing to fear. I think he's lived a good life. He's lived an honorable life, and he died an honorable death.
And if I can just add, one of his last tweets actually was a quote, I believe, from the Holy Quran, where he said, "We will surely give those who are patient their reward according to the best of what they used to do."
Yeah. Sometime in 2023, there was one of these accounts that I followed, one of the pseudonym kind of pro-resistance accounts. I think it was Ibn Riyad. He doesn't post as much now, but he posted, like, that Batman meme, so Robin has his back to you, and then Batman is slapping Robin, and Robin, out of Robin's mouth, is saying, the resistance should, and then Batman slaps him and says, the resistance knows what to do. Right? And I just
favorite meme, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I'd forgotten this one. I'm going to go and drag it.
I kind of have to do that to myself, on days like today. I was Batman slapping myself today because I was just like, man, like, they can't go to a bunker. Like, what about a little bit of a bunker? Like a little bit more bunkering, just, and I just, like, I just have to accept, I was talking to one of our friends too, Azad, and it's like, we've just been humbled, so many times now with how they kind of knew how things were going to go. And they made these decisions, and like things that didn't make sense to us. It turns out like Iran, they were negotiating and being, I don't know, like almost submissive, it seemed. And now they're not. And like all the time that they were using. And so it was like, for me, it's like, okay, I was Robin and they were Batman then. And so it must, I have to, I have to kind of think maybe that's the case now. But it's today was a hard day for me that way because of that. So I just called Batman to do that for me. Maybe you guys can be Batman for me today.
Well, we should all be Batman for one another in these times, because it's very easy to second guess, and guessing comes from regretting the loss. I mean, I remember how I felt and I felt even worse, when the supreme leader Ali Khamenei died. I was able to kind of immediately see it within a martyrdom kind of meaning, and think that there could be something positive come out, and very quickly we saw the evidence of that. But when Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah was martyred, that felt like such a blow, because he was a very charismatic and public figure in the resistance media, and the loss of him, he gave me comfort. In fact, even my wife said, well, I always felt when I saw Hassan Nasrallah that I believed that the resistance could never lose, right? That like he just had this charisma, that you had a feeling that victory was at hand. It may not come immediately, but it was inevitable. It would have to happen because of how convincing he was. In this case, what I wonder, I felt a little bit like you did, Justin, in the sense that the big symbolic victory that could come out of it was the supreme leader. That like galvanized and changed the whole atmosphere for the nation and for people around the world. And this one felt like, although it wasn't maybe a big tactical loss, the military clearly is happening. The whole military strategy has been set up, and they don't need these political leaders to really instruct them on how to go about waging this very effective asymmetrical war, and the mosaic defense, and the decentralizing of command. There's autonomy. This is people's war. And so the local commanders are enabled to make these decisions. But I do think that what it means is that some of the diplomatic kind of components of waging, this full spectrum war, information war, diplomatic and political, has lost somebody who clearly was a very effective and respected figure.
I think to honor him would be to do the shit posting that we think he would have done,
carry on his legacy. That's right. Get out there, people, on Twitter. Yeah, on X.
And there's some speculation that Israel killed him specifically to blow up those diplomatic off-ramps to accelerate.
And I don't know. I saw a message from him that said like, we're not making peace until Israel doesn't exist anymore. And maybe that was
all the reformists have been reformed, especially
didn't look like an off-ramp guy. That didn't look like your off-ramp guy to me.
Well, that's the off-ramp. It's happening in the American right. Some of them are ready to go do that too. When you have Robert Kagan, saying, well, yeah, Israel really isn't the greatest ally. It's sort of like South Vietnam was our ally. It's more like we're there to protect them rather than they're helping us in our strategic objective, which is a stunning kind of position. I mean, I have my own thoughts about exactly what's going on there, but my point there is that they can see that a close relationship with Israel, the way in which people are associating this war as on behalf of them and meeting their security interests and strategic objectives and so on, especially on the American right, that means that there are a lot of people who have reevaluated and, you know, might.
Yeah, I saw a comment which I thought was pretty good, which is that Israel has to manipulate all these spectrums of psychological warfare, and Iran just has to manipulate the gas price. And then once the gas price gets, I don't know what the gas prices are in the US.
One variable.
Yeah, but once the gas price gets above a certain level, they will cut bait and run on Israel like they cut bait on Vietnam, like on Afghanistan. As Kissinger said, it's dangerous to be America's enemy, but it's fatal to be America's quote unquote friend.
Yes. I mean, I love that quote. I looked it up, and it wasn't quite exactly what he was saying, but I think
he's saying it's a hypothetical. So he's saying if like what happens to the Vietnamese guy who got killed happens to the next guy, then people would say that. But we're now 60 years in where we've seen that happen like a dozen times. So I don't think it's a hypothetical anymore. I think like Kissinger from hell is approving that quote now.
It's turned into a syllogism at this point, right? Because you've had all the actual data to back it up.
I have a couple of things that I wonder if this reveals, though. Like when I learned that Larijani was at home, like visiting his family, and not in a bunker, I kind of realized, and I heard Morandi on Dialogue Works this morning, and he was saying, like, you know, like I've seen more destruction than I did in June, but like people are still doing work, like they're going to work, whatever. And I was thinking, like, it kind of tells me that from the Iranian perspective, they're assuming it's going to go long. Like, this is going to go a long time. We're not going to sit in a bunker for 6 months. We're going to live our lives. We're going to die or we're going to live, but we're not going to like treat this as that kind of emergency unless we have to. And so that was interesting because I know that Israel is in this kind of emergency footing and everybody's in the shelters all day and the leaders are clearly hiding. And so like the Iranians are like, yeah, okay, you'll kill one of us, once in a while. And we're gonna go on with this war. One Iranian commander said for 10 years. He was like, we can fight for 10. And if you're saying you can fight for 10 years, you're basically saying you can fight forever. So they're going to so that was one like, just from the way that it unfolded, it kind of told me that's one difference in terms of how the Iranians are thinking about it. The other thing is they do seem to have tried to kill somebody. Like they are openly trying to kill Netanyahu, and they're openly trying to kill Israeli leaders. So, and that's also different. And I think that's like I've always thought that the kind of idea that the Israelis can just assassinate anybody anywhere. Even today there was that spectacle of the dead Netanyahu and the fake ambassador, and he was like, "Look, I have this list," and the ambassador was like, "Oh, I'm glad I'm not on this list. I'm glad you're not going to kill me." Like it's so demented. It's totally demented. But like, the idea that they can just do that and there's nobody like even trying to kill them is kind of weird. It's almost like a devaluing of the lives of everybody except them. And so like it is, I think
it's a devaluing of their lives, right? Because like having them in position kind of makes stuff worse for the Israelis. Like you can say these are losses on the Iranian side. Would Netanyahu be a loss to anybody?
Yeah.
Would Ben-Gvir be a loss? Like,
but I also think it's a very clear sign of, like their mental processes is what I've come to call accusation. Like every accusation is a confession. So when they go after the leaders is because their own system is very top heavy, right?
Yeah.
So what they're telling the resistance is, if you kill our leaders, we won't know what to do anymore. And what we're seeing around Netanyahu over, I slipped, Milikovsky. I swore never to call him his fake name. Milikovsky over the past few days is a sign that we don't know what happened to him. Maybe he had some operation for his prostate. Maybe he was smoked. Maybe they're trying to clone him and, stitch him back together or whatever it is. But clearly there was some fake thing put out. And, is not been at the military council where it's supposed to be, and not a few other, major figures weren't there. So something is happening and they're trying to hide it. Whereas on the other side, and Iran is amazing. If you haven't watched the conversation between Bikram Gale and Elie Duhati, I think, it's beautiful because she's there, and she was there when Ali Khamenei was martyred, and she just told us, what it was like. Everybody went out in the streets. Everybody was crying. Nobody was speaking. Everybody gathered in a place where they could get a wise person recognized in the community to come and talk about what was coming. And you can't kill the leaders of such a you can kill their leaders, but as you kill their leader, it's almost as if you're using their blood as an accelerator to popular unity, to the resistance spirit. I mean, they have managed to unite the younger generation in Iran around lifelong anti-imperialism with the generation of, the 79 revolution and then the 8 years of war against Iraq, a war that was egged on, financed, armed, including with poison gas by the West, and the poison gas, of course, by the Germans, because, Germans will German. And that is something that they can't understand. And they're at the point, and really, I hammer this one on, but it's the point of dialectical inversion. So everything they do, they can't stop themselves from doing, but it has the exact inverse effect. And we have to clean up our Western minds to go, Larry Jan is gone, he was the one coordinating the defense, and it's a big loss. But maybe it isn't. Maybe this is the way you fight your people's war of today. And it's not just by being a martyr. They have organized, these people have spent the past, I think they said they started in 81, right? When Saddam attacked them, they went, okay, we knew. And the title of today's episode is From Strategic Patience, which many people, and me in my weaker days, thought was an excuse for not rising up to the plate when it was needed. And 4K live stream genocide makes you want to see someone do something, right? But actually they had to wait for this moment on so many levels, military, social level. They had to wait for their enemies to make the mistakes that would gel not just the Iranian nations, but this might actually turn the zombie that was Arab nationalism into a force that will rise and erase completely all traces of colonialism in the region, including all those crazy Sykes-Picot borders that were literally, two guys who knew enough. They probably couldn't place the region on a map, and then they used a ruler from middle school.
I mean, it was like Sykes, right? It was like Sykes-Picot.
The French came in for the ride.
Picot, really? Pico, really?
Pico was
Sykes was famous. I think Sykes liked the Arabs, so they kind of put him in charge. He didn't like the Turks, and he liked the Arabs. And I remember going over that history and reading about Sykes and thinking, my God, if you have an Englishman who likes you, what a horrific fate you're up for.
Well, I think we could say that resistance is fertile and the martyrs fertilize the resistance, so that's one dynamic we've been seeing. But also, I don't think he was that important to the military component. That is it seems well established. And in fact, actually, as Onur D9C put in the chat, he was actually something of a moderate. As India was saying, the reformists have been reformed. This is a reformist administration. Pezeshkian, Araghchi, Larijani, they were identified in the past as being the more moderate wing. They were open to negotiations. They looked westward. They've been educated, they've in the West, and believed that their understanding and knowledge of the West could allow them to communicate in a certain way. And ultimately, they are not the same as the people who are perhaps lower down, younger, who have been forged in these experiences now, and are going to be less willing to negotiate, and are not going to be settling, and are seeing victories. And so in some ways, the resistance produces its own leaders. So the loss of some of these leaders are leaders who are from that era of the revolution and the early period of the Islamic Republic, and they've risen to seniority in having these positions, and they've done an amazing job in fighting for Iran's sovereignty. But now we're in the battle, and it's wartime consigliaries are needed now, and they're going to be produced. We may not even know them because they might be lower level commanders, majors, colonels, etc., and others who will win the authority and credibility from the people when it is time to make some kinds of deals, or confirm negotiations and so on. It'll be with this new supreme leader and whatever cadre emerges out of the successful victory of this round of resistance, I feel.
And so Justin was talking about his Batman moment. So my son has a Batman toy, and Batman, I think, is the most reactionary superhero. He's basically a billionaire that goes around beating up common criminals and abducting people. So I retold him Batman as a Palestinian whose parents are killed by Israel, and then he starts digging tunnels and caves, and I basically kind of told him Sinwar's story, except as Batman. So that's who my son thinks Batman is. But one of the Batman moments for me is there's this Sheikh Saleh al-Aruri. So he was killed, I think, in Syria, I think in that embassy attack. And one of his quotes is, "Our heroic martyrs, when they are from the leadership and from the first ranks of leadership, they awaken all the ranks of our people to be part of the resistance. This is an indication of sincerity. When the leaders and first ranks come forward to martyrdom, we affirm in a categorical and definitive way that our blood and souls are not greater nor dearer than that of any martyr. We are equal. The martyr that precedes us by one day is better than us. Better than us." So we're asking why was he out marching in the streets with the people? Why was he going and visiting his family? It's because these leaders are with the people. I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I heard from Khamenei was that they asked, "You want to go in a bunker?" And then he asked, "Can you put Tehran in a bunker?" And if the answer is no, then I'm not going. These people are with the people. And to put it maybe in a way that Americans understand, so when I was young, I grew up in the 90s, and I started listening to Nirvana after Kurt Cobain died. And I started listening to Biggie and Tupac after they were killed. And that is, in fact, how I heard about them. So for a lot of people, they will hear about these people through their death. And Nasrallah, I was brokenhearted when he died, but yet I still talk to him almost every day. These people have left bodies of work, and what they're doing lives on. And someone in the comments asked, I hope they had a succession plan. Yeah, they had a succession plan. There's a Photros Resistance, who's you should definitely follow on Telegram, and REJ on Twitter. He said, Iran's administration and command structure is not at risk. Sensitive and commanding positions have up to 7 levels of replacements deputies that can immediately resume work during crisis. And one way to look at this sort of organizationally is that Iran is organizationally built for this, and they get replenishment of the ranks. You get new people. Whereas in the empire, the same horrible people who were involved in wars in the 80s have only failed upwards. Yes. Robert Kagan at this point is like Jabba the Hutt. He's just sitting there war, eating worms. No one has replenished the ranks. So they just have the dumbest people rising up. And my wife was asking strategically, why would they do this? I'm well, within that environment, if you say something like this might be stupid, you get kicked out. And if you go along with every stupid idea, you get only rewarded. So, like, these martyrdoms replenish the ranks of the resistance. And the fact that the empire offers nobody to martyrdom just makes, like, their ranks retarded.
Yeah, it's a case of like security and military officials and university administrators, the people who get rewarded for being failures. The two special pools of labor, I would say. Yeah.
Like, I think there's the funny thing with democracy, and democracy is just a word. It's a stupid bullshit word, but
I call it democracy TM because they've trademarked one thing.
Yeah, exactly. But when this war kind of started, I have this feeling like, I know the Americans can't beat Iran, and I know that the Israelis can't beat them. Come on, but Iran can beat Iran, right? Like, the only people that can beat Iran are Iran, and when you think about, like, if all their leaders were in bunkers, you have a free society. Like, it's hard for people to believe, but you have a free society where people can say what they want, where they believe in their leaders and each other, and they see their leaders have a higher death rate than the average person. And so that means they're real leaders. That means they're people you want to follow, as opposed to people who are safe in a bunker, which you can have if you're not a democracy, like the Western countries, where they can hide in a bunker because it's some kind of royalty, oligarchy, aristocracy, or whatever it is, because they don't actually depend on the support of the people in these efforts. And one other thing about patience, because I might not get I still have 15 minutes, but just in case I don't get to say this, like, when you think about, like, what they were waiting for, I think the January 8th, 9th events, the riots, and the fact that it was only in January of this year that Iran finally wound up the intelligence network that the Israelis, the extensive network of assassins and spies that the Israelis had inside Iran. And if that had not happened, if they had not succeeded in that, this war would not look like it's looking now. It would not be as successful as it is now. If you think about what it was like in June, how brutal that first half day was. I mean, still, it was only a half day, but still, it was the counterintelligence effort, and which again depended on popular support, people reporting on these spies and reporting that people are suspicious, and doing things. And that's what made this success in this war possible that they've had. And it's also what's made, I believe that's what made October 7th possible, was Yahya Sinwar's specific mastery of counterintelligence on the Israelis. So I just, if when you think about, like, what were they waiting for, it's this kind of thing. It's this kind of thing that you can't see until it blows up like it did in January, and then they roll it up. And then that gives them vastly new abilities to do things.
Yes. And White Empire is closing down all its own escape hatches, right? Which is like the strategic brilliance of the moment. It's actually pushing them into a corner, and I don't see this ending anywhere other than Al-Quds. Actually, it can't end before that. They won't let it end. The one point about leaders and cost that I think is very important: if you want to lead the people, if you want to speak up, you have to accept there will be costs. A very good, now a friend, I hope, Justin said, we have to give to Gaza until it hurts, right? We use it in our countdown now because there is a cost. There is a cost to being a free person of the world. There is a cost to being a moral person. There is in a world which is run by a bunch of, once again, baby bothering, human jerky eating cod satanists. There is a cost, and we must feel it inside each and every one of us that we are willing to pay this cost, whatever that cost could be. And also societies like Iran, like China, Russia to an extent, it's a bit more complex, are extremely meritocratic societies, right? So if you kill the leaders, you water, you give fertilizer to the resistance, but also the people underneath are extremely competent themselves. So you're not going to weaken the actual competence of society. If anything, you renew it. Whereas in the West, the costs have already been paid. They've been paid in doing all those, the only people who rise to the top are the corruptible ones that have already been corrupted, so that you have enough on them that you're basically always holding them with a gun to their head, right? And they have to do things, they have very little wiggle room, or a big scandal happens to them. So they've already paid the cost, they've already paid their dues to Satan, if you want, and they live in constant fear, but they're not leaders. I mean, maybe Netanyahu, maybe Milikovsky is a leader of sorts, but the others are just a bunch of bozos and clowns, and we all know they don't make the actual decisions, right? So you have this constant role. You could actually replace them, but at the same time, because the empire is so solipsistic, it's so racist that it can't admit that their leaders could be killed. It's the same way that they can't admit, it's like they're all savages and their primitive arrows can't actually hurt us, right? And they get into this really weird mind space where they believe that admitting that your planes fall off the sky, that your most expensive flagship carrier can catch fire and you get 600 beds burned out of a fire in the laundry room.
It was too much lint.
That that all this stuff happens just out of technical malfunction is somehow less humiliating than saying we got smoke. But to them it is, because the savages are so inhuman that they can't actually hurt you. It's literally I think I played it before, but it's the Monty Python scene, 'tis but a flesh wound, come back, you coward, and all the rest of it. And that is what is going to lose them. And I think the strategic brilliance of all those great thinkers was to actually get that, which, by the way, the Chinese Sun Tzu scholars as they are, don't seem to have completely understood how depraved, stupid, and solipsistically supremacist the opposition is.
I want to so you were talking about how they can't conceive of basically savage generals. This is a quote from Clausewitz. So I think Clausewitz is good to read, but he's still a European. And he said, "We will never find a savage who is a truly great commander, and very rarely one who would be considered a military genius, since this requires a degree of intellectual powers beyond anything that a primitive people can develop." So he's saying not only at the time of, I think this is the mid-1800s, but he's saying basically forever, these people will never produce generals.
And they have not moved an inch. They still believe this, all of them.
Yeah. All the Epstein emails are full of race IQ, IQ, race, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and they're trying to make themselves in a vat. But you can see that's sort of their weakness. And I think Iran, look, they've tried talking to these guys, and they figured out the only way they learn is if you physically kick them out. And so they are producing great generals. Soleimani was a great general. The commanders they have on the field now, whose names we'll find out soon, these are great generals. This is a fantastic strategy, which is pushing... what I say is this is a strategic defeat for empire in the way they haven't experienced before. It's not like Vietnam or Afghanistan where they get kicked out of land. They're getting kicked out of the sea. The Fifth Fleet base is gone, and the Fifth Fleet is hiding behind Oman, and like the laundry has joined the resistance. So this is a huge, huge like epoch shifting thing. And just to connect it back to sort of maybe costs, right? I think a lot of this Western propaganda is for Western audiences who are, as of yet, somewhat divorced from the costs of what's going on.
Yes.
So you don't need to tell, like, so they keep saying, oh, we destroyed 90% of missiles, 100% of missiles, 110% of missiles. Tell that to someone in UAE. You know, a friend of a friend came in on a flight through Dubai before they completely shut it down, and they said there were 2 fighter jets on each side of the plane. And that would not make me feel more comfortable, you know? So that person does not need to be propagandized to say there's no danger, everything's fine, like the sheik is your daddy and going to take care of you. Like that doesn't work on those people. And for the people within occupied Palestine, they know that Hezbollah is hitting them. Hezbollah is hitting 160 kilometers deep. You don't need to propagandize those people. And I'll extend it to say within Sri Lanka and within India and within Bangladesh, we don't need to be propagandized that the empire is losing. The imperial trade routes have already broken down for us. So Sri Lanka right now, we've declared Wednesday a holiday. I was in all Wednesdays are a holiday now. And we have rations for fuel. And then in India, they're not able to make dosa, which is like catastrophic. And then as in natural gas is running out. So we know that the people that we humiliated ourselves for in order to be part of this petrodollar trade route system, we know that system is breaking down. And something like death is something you can't spin, right? So something like Ali Larijani being killed, you know that he died honorably. They can lie about him all you want, but you see what's going on. And so the propaganda right now is deployed against Western audiences, and it's just a timing difference before the costs that have already hit Asia or hit them.
Well, you know, one other component of this is also related to what you were saying about the kind of racist presumptions that are involved. It reminds me this war and what its consequences can be remind me a little bit of what happened to colonialism during World War II, where in Asia, you know, nationalists in Indonesia said, you know, we saw, and also in India, we saw how frightened the British were of the Japanese. And it opened up in our imagination that this construct that they had created, and that, as you know, our minds had also been colonized as well, and we looked up to these people and thought, yes, they are dominating us because they are superior. Well, then the Japanese came and caused so much fear and anxiety and absolutely tore through them that it opened up this kind of possibility for resistance from us. We could conceive that we could, you know, throw off colonialism. And so what I wonder is also here, on the grand stage in this era, as much as they may try and propagandize, hide the losses that they're suffering, de-emphasize the strategic brilliance of Iran's tactics and the effectiveness of it, around the world, people are seeing. And the question is might this be a moment that, maybe not immediately, but it gives people greater confidence that they too can rise up against the empire. And we might see in coming years a much more comprehensive collapse, not just because it collapses from the inside, but also that theaters of resistance open up because people have been emboldened by the rending of this Western superiority myth, which we know was already shifting with China's rise. But you know, we're seeing it in a kind of more visceral sort of way on the battlefield, which is also what World War II did.
Yeah, like I don't know if you guys watch like Colonel McGregor, but Colonel McGregor will say things like, well, you know, we're going to have to retreat to our hemisphere and we can do whatever we want in our own hemisphere. But you know, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know if Iran, you know, if things continue this way, I think that's going to be a huge logistical, like it's a vampire that gains their strength from draining the wealth of the world. If you lose this huge, the fundamental, you know, well of wealth that you're sucking, you're not going to have the same strength in our hemisphere that you had before. So I'm not so sure that this, like, it's just gonna, you're just gonna become, they're just gonna have this wonderful life as a regional hegemon either. It could be more like becoming a country like any other country, which is what, China and Russia, and Iran say that's what they want. They just want everybody to be the same. They don't want empires. They don't want foreign bases. They don't want, value transfer. They don't necessarily use that exact terminology, but it'll be that kind of world. And I just want to say, one last thing, probably because I gotta go. But like about the title of today, like strategic patience to strategic victory. I think it's like, again, to Batman slap myself one last time before I go. Like it is worth remembering or retaining now and marking now, because it is early in the war. But on March 17th, there's a whole lot that Iran has left undestroyed. A whole lot that Iran could have destroyed already. They've said this so many times. Morandi said it this morning. He was just like, we could destroy all the oil infrastructure. We could actually close the strait. We haven't closed it. But then that's bad for everybody. And we don't want to do something that's bad for everybody. We want them to get the message just from showing that we can. But if they don't, then it is going to get more destructive because Iran has no choice. So I hope, the sooner the West can come to their senses, the less destructive this process has to be.
That is the bottom line, it seems to me, is will they finally learn a lesson soon enough for it to be of value to the rest of the world,
Yes, but it will not be the lesson that will save them, because not only are they non-agreement capable, as Lavrov said, non-negotiation capable, as maybe Larijani said, but they are not taking yes for an answer capable, and they are not stopping capable. And the point you made about, I call him Colonel Blimp McGregor, let's retreat to our hemisphere and do what we want with the savages down there, makes no sense, because this is a world system. It's a totalizing political economy, and it cannot work the way, in an autarkic fashion, the way the Soviet Union and the socialist sphere did for a while, and not so well. I mean, if you retreat to South America and you cut off China, what are you going to do exactly, right? And I think, when we think about what are the two legs of this latest incarnation, and I believe last incarnation of 500 years of white empire, they are control of international finance, being the petrodollar, very linked to the energy, these fossil energies that they are doing everything to prop up, actually, as China is trying to develop renewable energy. And the other side of it is the violence. And violence is a narrative tool. Violence is a tool of psychological warfare. It's something you do to bend people to your will when you deny them the fundamental human quality of self-determination and sovereignty. And if you look at those two pillars, they're gone. They're goners. I mean, I've known about the military one since I read Bernie Curmudgeon, Martianov's Losing Military Supremacy in 2017. That was before he spoke on the internet, so you could take him more seriously, but very serious book. And when you look at the other one, the finance, there was, I sent you, Justin, this guy, I don't know who is, something Gorbachev, so I'd never seen him before, but he made this point that I found very perceptive. He said, the petrodollar is dead. The yuan prices the barrel. The Chinese get all they want, and they pay in yuan. And by the way, all of the Saudi oil is also paid in yuan these days. The allies called Tehran and the IRGC is running intelligent and complete control. The system that priced oil in dollars and US military support, I'm adding to the tweet, for 50 years, prices oil in permissions now. The actual price of your barrel of oil is the permission from Iran to let your tanker pass the strait. Like, it's what made Modi, I mean, fascists are stupid at the end of that. It's what made Modi learn Farsi in 3 days flat, right? And now he's tweeting fluently in Farsi.
Yeah.
Because he's paying the price, is actually paying his due. The price of the barrel is permission from Iran. And this is why everybody's on the telephone to Iran. And wasn't Larijani talking about, Arakshi, his telephone call with Macron, and Justin said, why don't you guys just publish the DMs like normal denizens of the internet, right?
Like grown-ups, yeah.
Like grown-ups. But you see, the money machine doesn't work anymore. It's finished. They can print it, but you can't buy the permissions with it anymore. Yeah. And you're really in that, what was this Chief Seattle situation, in which, yes, you can print, all suitcases of dollars to pay your foreign legion of the alphabet soup of head shoppers with, but you can't eat the stuff. You can't run your Toyota pickup trucks, for head shopping, rent a head shopping DoorDash with the bills in the thing. So it's gone because and also you have to remember that all those satrapies, all their money is in US accounts. And we know that the US, overnight can just say, oh no, all your money belongs to us. All your gold belongs to us. They did it to Iran, they did it to Venezuela, to the Venezuelan. So it's all, disappearing in their hands in a puff of white smoke, meaning maybe the new Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that the price of oil will be set by like the one criterion of, are you trying to kill Iranians or not? Are you participating in killing Iranians?
And I can tell you from Sri Lanka, there's a new sheriff in town. So
it's back to the tyranny of geography.
Yeah, like we had an oil crisis before, which is when the U.S. basically like lowered our financial ratings, and then like everything collapsed. So they were able to financialize stuff here. They were able to do whatever in Nepal, Pakistan. Now people aren't really talking about the U.S. Everybody's talking about Iran. That's the new sheriff. So our foreign minister is not talking to the U.S. and even in India, which is naturally not always. Under Manmohan Singh, they were even through sanctions. They traded with Iran and they were friendly with Iran. But Modi is not naturally friendly to Iran, and Modi would love to be like kissing some Israeli boot. But even he is tweeting in Persian now. I can tell you from down here, things have changed. We've always taken terms, and we always oriented ourselves in terms of the West, and people are reorienting fast. I think Adnan was talking about like, will this embolden other resistance movements? I don't know. It seems to be emboldening Modi to like join some sort of resistance, and he doesn't have a resistant bone in his body. Like people go where the energy is. And I can tell you what's happening here. Like you talk about what's going to happen to America. I don't think the United States of America will exist by 2030, 2035. But they're nearing the end of their sort of, right now, Trump's saying, oh, we have our own energy. We're doing great out of this. Yeah, you guys are like fracking stuff and like pouring methane out of your water pipes in order to like get the last, it's like a junkie tapping the last vein in their toes. Like there is some stuff there, but that's the last vein. And so their shale oil production is going to go down, and then their trucks require like 50 liters of petrol to go to like the grocery store. So they're going to have some internal problems. And Iran has said, imposed, so for a long time there was like sort of like an immoral gate on the Strait of Hormuz. There was this thing that as long as you were immoral you can get through, but Iran can't get through. And now Iran is saying, no, we're going to put a moral gate on this. If you're moral, then you can get through, and if you're immoral, then sorry, you're on fire. And I'm telling you, down from like this side of the Indian Ocean, everybody's getting in line.
And we're talking about unbelievable amounts of money. I'll leave you guys on that, but like, the glitz, the glamour, the wealth of the Gulf is because everything can only get out through that one little thing. It turns out.
And the air corridor. So Emirates alone, I think, is losing $1 million an hour. Yeah, at least.
It's
all their money in the US bank account.
I might show, depending on how much longer you go, I might show back up as a troll. We'll see.
Okay, great.
Oh, so that's motivation to stay for another 2 hours or something.
Okay, guys.
So
Bye.
someone
Bye,
said
everybody.
something smart on here. It's just him.
Actually, excuse me for 1 second. I never checked if my children woke up. I'll be back in 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. We're down to 2.
We're down to 2, and I don't know about you, but I'm
We might get
certainly not the smartest, the sharpest knife in the
that's
drawer.
great.
But
This is,
Anyway.
we'll get reinforcements back. In a
Yeah.
moment. But yeah, well, I guess I just wanted to see, well, where do we want to go from here? There's a lot of other interesting, issues to take up. I was just looking.
I wanted to,
Go ahead.
So a strategic victory, and
Right.
and the point that I want to emphasize, the point that Indi made, because I'm just all white, and but you, Adnan and Justin, although you come from the
don't be
global
white, man. You can just be Montrealer or something. Just choose
you
something.
come from the global south, and you also, Indi, you were kind of educated to be spiritually white, let's put it that way. And it's very easy for us to keep that, global north perspective. And the way you just presented, how the cookie is crumbling in the global majority countries, and Sri Lanka is not the canary in the coal mine, but it's actually a really good case because it's not like dominant, and it's really, it has to be very careful as to which way the wind blows, because any breeze can actually make everybody catch a really bad cold. You said that there is now a national holiday every Wednesday because of the impact of this on the energy situation in Sri Lanka. So it's very serious. It's happening. It's of course going to be very costly, especially to folks in the global south. But we are seeing now, the shape of the strategic victory of the axis of resistance. And when there's a strategic victory, there is a strategic defeat. And, it literally, the Twitter is beautiful, these days. Like someone said, Trump asked China for help before Iran did. Right? Many of us have been going, yeah, Iran should help. China should help Iran and everything, but it's actually Trump going cap in hand to China and say, "Look, you want the oil going to the street, don't you?" But also, you have to realize that for the Zionist entity, they have gone from 15 minutes warning to barely 30 seconds. Yeah. They are now getting deliveries with no alerts, no alarms. So those people, Justin mentioned it, but those people are living in bunkers because, they can't face up to what they're doing. They can only do war behind a video screen and inside a bunker. They have no idea what they're doing. And you're already seeing videos of Zionists completely losing it. I've been in a bunker for 3 days. What about my internet connection and being able to do my, TikToks and all the rest of it on the beach? And that is extremely important. And if you want to see the shape of the strategic defeat, like they went from one day, this is a one-day operation, to, it will be won, not in one day, but in a week, to lately send help. And you listen to Trump. I generally only look at him with the sound off, but today I made an exception and I turned the sound on. And the guy said, well, our allies didn't help us when we needed that. Not that we needed the help, actually, but, it would have been nice if they gave us help and all the rest. And he said these crazy things like, they did lots of things that they weren't supposed to do. They weren't supposed to throw bombs at all these other Gulf countries. They weren't supposed to do that. Nobody expected that. No expert could have predicted that. Morandi has been on 25 channels a day, repeating this solidly for at least the past 12 months, as far as I can remember. Right?
Yeah, I feel bad for him. He's talking to the biggest idiots, yeah.
Khamenei said, I think, was it February the 1st? If there is a war, it will be a regional war. Nobody, And it's really like this Millennium Challenge exercise that David reminded us of. In 2002, the biggest, most expensive war game ever, the Blues trying to smash the Reds, meaning Iran, and they put this retired lieutenant general in charge of the Reds who does unconventional tactics and actually beats the Reds in a day and a half. And then they stop the game and they go, no, we'll change the rules and start again. And instead of going, oh, maybe we should rethink a little bit our, military tactics here. Maybe learning at the teeth of the defeated Nazis who, only know blitzkrieg and nothing else wasn't such a good idea when you're fighting people who know how to fight. No. And you hear it in Trump. He said, they did things they weren't supposed to do. They were not supposed to do. And ChatGPT didn't tell you that the Iranians were going to do that. You know why? Because the Zionists have been flooding ChatGPT with ridiculous content about the strength of the US and the Zionists, and the 4 serious PhD theses on the fact that this was very likely to happen got drowned in the noise picked up by those pattern aggregators that are so-called artificial intelligence. Well, they are as artificial as the morals of one Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, Trump was saying like we beat them. Like, why haven't they opened the Strait of Hormuz? It's like, okay. They're really
losers aren't supposed to do that.
Yeah,
they're really flying by their instruments. Like they're like, oh, my instruments say that they have this many missiles, and we took this many out, so we're down to 20. And it's like, bro, like they make missiles. That's like going to a bakery at the end of the day and saying, oh, they're out of bread. It's like, no, like come in the morning.
yeah. Well, that's another component of it, is that the U.S. military develops its target bank from what it knows, and its idea of target banks are, observable military infrastructure, radar, anti-missile batteries, etc. And then, hospitals and, schools and so on. And it starts with, a mix of these things, as we know, since the first day was, included a school with 168 young girls being killed. But, then they report back up the chain. We've hit these many hundreds of targets. We've destroyed these many, missiles and missile battery stations and so on. And what it reminds me of is, the not understanding what is your strategic objective and aligning your tactics and your methods to achieve them, because they didn't necessarily know what the strategic goal would be. They had the fantasy that eliminating the supreme leader would lead to so-called regime collapse and so forth. So they don't know how to go about this in a constructive military way. And so what it reminds me so much of is in Vietnam, the VC counts. Like, they didn't know what to do. They were like, well, kill Viet Cong. And so then they ended up developing all kinds of reports that, ended up totaling like multiple times the total population, of the entire enemy country. And it's because there's an incentive to report, oh, we hit these targets, we hit that, we've hit so many. And so then they report to Trump, and because he gets this report, we've run out of targets, we've just destroyed all these ships, we've hit all this, that he then thinks, of course we must have won. And it's this kind of self-fulfilling bubble that they're in. And so he can't understand why it is that they're not. In fact, it led him to start making these, what must be painful comments of admitting that the Iranians, they're pretty smart people, because, everything that he knew about them has now been destroyed. So they must be a little bit smarter than he was led to believe. I mean, it's
that's why I don't follow Trump that much anymore. Like, they're not in control. They're not dictating terms anymore. Like, Iran is in control in terms of so I think Aragachi, I'm pronouncing that Sri Lankan way, sorry, but like Aragachi and like all I think Ghalibaf, who's the parliament speaker, they've all come out and said like, no ceasefire. This is not like, it's almost like, listen to US statements, it's like it's kind of amusing, it's like comedic relief, but they're not in control of the situation anymore. Iran has like a steady escalation ladder, and they're climbing it.
Yeah, and to be fair, the level of popular mobilization in Iran, and tonight people were out in the street in their millions again, but with an extra edge of vengefulness, I think, because of the martyrdom of Ali Larijani, right? And the population won't let them go for a ceasefire. It's not like in June, the June war was, especially in the cities, look, we've almost reached, Western level, and we have WhatsApp, and we're watching the imperialist TV channels in Farsi, and please leave us alone, and this is kind of inconvenient. But now it's not this at all. Now I think the whole population is like, we need to get these devils out of this place. Like, there is absolutely no other way to go about it. So that's a very important point. There was another one I wanted to make and that I lost. So I'll probably interrupt you later when it.
Well, I think it was Adnan, or was it Justin, who's talking about kind of contrasting, like there's a people's war on the Iranian side, and they had to sort of. So I think, as sad as it is, they couldn't have done this for Palestine. They couldn't have mobilized the population to this degree for Palestine, but they can mobilize the population this much for Iran. So because they sort of, I mean, a lot of people online were saying, oh, they should, as Americans were assembling, that was when to hit them. But because they hit first, even given the great costs you take, then you are able to stitch your population together in a great, like, popular resistance against what's going on. And now this, of course, goes unreported in the West, but there's, since day one, I think for 16, 17 days now, Iranians have been in the street protesting for the government. And then if you look at Reza Pahlavi's statements, which, I mean, I don't recommend that, but he's saying, oh, my supporters, like, stay out of the streets. But you can't, like Justin was talking about how they had those saboteur cells who disguise as protesters or who simply spot missile bases and like hit them. But you can't do that anymore because the people are in the streets, stopping any sort of subterfuge. Like, you can't, like, a small cell can't do anything because there's thousands of people in the street protecting their own country.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the thing. It's just a small point is about, that guy Trump. You can see he's bored of it. Like he said, oh, those guys are high level chess players, high IQ guys. They're the best that rise to the top. And then he said, no, but I want to take Cuba. I'm going to take Cuba, Cuba. And that's like probably the way he used to speak on Epstein's Island, right? I want to take that one. Oh, yeah, that one is beautiful. I can actually do anything I want to Cuba. I can do anything. And that's who we have. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if I call them Team B, if they were trying to engineer to have Milikovsky and Trump as the fall guys of that misadventure. Like you had the guy, what is he? The guy that resigned today and saying, I'm not going to serve the Zionist entity or whatever, as if, and Team B, basically, brothers and sisters, is, okay, now we can tell you, it was all the Jews' fault. The bad Jews, they've been doing the bad stuff for 2,000 years, 3,000 years. Actually, it was promised to them in the Bible that they would do the bad stuff. So now let's give the bad stuff to them. And we can continue being, the pure white superior race now that we will have cleansed the Jews once more. Don't fall for it. Let's go for the jugular and bring this all white empire genocidal monster down.
Absolutely.
So I play like Axis and Allies, and it's sort of like a World War II war game. And so what Trump is, he's going to try and get Cuba, right? Some sort of consolation prize. But in Axis and Allies, there's like, so when you're playing, you have to go for the jugular. If you try and like just copy, like, I think there's like South America, right? South America doesn't factor into World War II, but if you can go and get South America easily, but then you just weaken your homeland and it falls apart. Like, he's not going for the jugular, whereas Iran has the Strait of Hormuz. They have the literal jugular of the world economy.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll call it now. If they go for Cuba, they won't get it. Cuba is not, one of those underage girls on Epstein Island. Cuba has
Well, they have to move.
ways and
They have
means
to
to
move
defend
there.
itself.
So they have to move. They've been whipping. So I think the Gerald Fart or whatever, that was in Venezuela, I think. Then they whip it across the ocean to the Persian Gulf. Then like the toilets blow up and the laundry room blows up, and then they're gonna whip it back across. Like they're going
to take Cuba.
yeah, these whole, and also like there's this assumption that soldiers will do whatever they're told, and that's true up to a point, but morale has got to be terrible on these boats. So you got 600 guys sleeping on the floor, and when you flush the toilet, poop comes onto the floor. So this is not a good living situation, and also they can't do laundry. So the laundry room, they can't do laundry anymore.
You can't shit a shitter, can you?
So
Yeah.
all this stuff has an expiry date on it, right? So I think the Ford has been out for 9 months. I think the maximum, I think that's it's nearing the longest deployment. I think the maximum is like 11 months. And those aren't kind of just suggestions. It's not just crew morale. These things, as you can see, start to break down.
Yeah.
And Iran knows this, so they don't need 10 years. There's something from Will Schreier, and he was talking about the Tomahawk, just the simple Tomahawk loading capacity and the VLS, virtual launch system, loading capacity on these aircraft. And they're pretty on the aircraft carriers, and they're pretty tapped out. Given whatever their rate of fire is, which he's calculated, they're almost done. And they have to go back, since the Fifth Fleet base is destroyed, they have to go back to Crete to reload, or in certain things, they have to go back to the US. So there's someone in Iran, I mean, they know enough math for that. They have spreadsheets calculating how many Tomahawks we get hit by, how many Tomahawks are in the thing, when do they have to reload. And we're quickly nearing that point.
I want to make another point about Cuba, Again, I'll go back to this thing. Western leftists being addicted to defeat. And, and you have all the Trotskyite galaxy that kind of supports Cuba for one reason and one reason only, is that Cuba, in their minds, has been on the verge of collapse since the Bay of Pig invasion, right? And again, the same narrative is coming, and you see the same leftists, imperial compatible leftists coming out of the woodwork and going, oh, they're going to take Cuba now, they're going to take Cuba, they're going to take Cuba. In your dreams, they're going to take Cuba. This is a society that is mobilized behind, its system. It will fight for its system. Like Venezuela, they couldn't take Venezuela. They could do this one operation in and out in 2 hours or something, and that's all they could do. They cannot do more than this to Cuba. I'm telling you now, they can't do more than this to Cuba. Cuba will resist. Cuba will fight them. Cuba doesn't need petrol to fight them. They can fight them because they have a popular defense. So I beseech you, brothers and sisters, don't believe that stuff that, it's a white supremacist mind that goes, the US empire is omnipotent. Don't be like Douglas McGregor. Even in the Western Hemisphere, that dying empire cannot do anymore what it wants. I mean, they all the adult diapers market has been cornered by the Zionists. So there are none left for the US soldiers. They can't clean their dirty laundry, and they can't even take a dump in sanitary conditions. That is no way to run an army, and these people are not going anywhere. And if they do go, which they might do, because maybe Trump will say, nobody, the Cubans, they did things nobody ever expected. They weren't supposed to do the things they did to us when we tried to take Cuba. But everybody's telling him, I'm telling you, Donald, don't go. You'll get burned.
And it's important to remember, in Venezuela, a lot of the people who died were Cuban. So I think it was about 50 or 60 members of the Cuban guard around Maduro who died.
Yeah.
As in died fighting.
I think that's fighting.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, this is an opportunity in a way, perhaps. I think you're absolutely right that the consolation prize will be Trump's Grenada, like Ronald Reagan beating up on some, thinking that they will be able to beat up.
But Grenada was just, a fledgling revolution just started with dissensions and stuff. It was not Cuba.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, it's a totally different circumstance, but he might have the similar kind of logic, trying to have a win of some sort. But I think this is a moment of maximal weakness for the U.S. empire, and so if he tries to open up a second front and a second, adventure, could be accelerating even further collapse and confusion. On the same token, I mean, I'm really hopeful that other fronts will emerge. I mean, I think that's amazing work that Iran is doing for the globe in seeing that this is a paper tiger. It can be resisted. You just have to have solidarity in your own society. And I think that's one thing that's also been really interesting. And Indi had mentioned it, and I think is a really important point, is that the kinds of chaos that were sown in these riots, the so-called protests on January 8th and 9th, that can't really happen under this atmosphere because of the way in which the public sphere, the streets, the square, the maidans, the traffic circles, everything, they're flooded every night with people who are filled with this sense of revolutionary solidarity. And despite all of the war bombardment and the assassinations of leaders, we've not seen civil order break down, right? So this is another thing that this is showing. This is a people's war in the sense that it develops from the social organization of the people. It isn't just a technical military question. It is also that it is built upon a platform of people's solidarity. And this is something that, a year ago, 2 years ago, when there were large 3 or 4 years ago, when there were really large protests, the women life freedom, movement that did have a social base. And we know the reason why we know it had a social base is because when Dave and I were in Tehran, you could see that it is no longer, hijab is no longer a crucial issue. It's up to the individual woman whether they want to wear or not, and it's not going to be enforced by law. I didn't see any examples of social pressure or people looking askance, at those who didn't wear or those who wore. It has basically become a non-issue, which shows that it was the government was responsive to its society. I mean, our governments are so much less responsive to public will than Iran's is, even on this kind of key crucial point. And so the point is, though, that there's such a contrast, though, in reviving the revolutionary spirit. And I'm just very intrigued to see what direction, this can go, both within Iran and whether it inspires some changes more broadly in the world. Of course, first in the region, hopefully, but also more broadly in the world. And, we keep seeing signs of changing consciousness, I think, happening. But I did want to also, I don't know if people want to talk about that at all, but I did also want to talk about Lebanon. There have been some really excellent, long, pieces of analysis by Amal Saad. And if you don't follow Amal Saad, who's a wonderful scholar of Hezbollah in the UK, she's had a number of I think, very important interventions to help put into context what is happening in Lebanon. And what I heard from Lath's conversation, I can't remember if it was on Garland Nixon. He's also somebody who's been on a lot of shows, not quite Mirandi levels, but getting up there. And he was saying that there have been 3 or 4 announced attempts by the Israeli military of impending ground invasion. And they keep hearing about how there's going to be a ground invasion. And there are clearly attempts to start a ground invasion, but they keep being repelled by the resistance. There was like an attack through Sheba Farms where they had to come through Syria, and where, according to Laith's contacts, there were some of Jolani's brigades were participating in them on behalf of Israel, and they were utterly crushed. And there have been, of course, from other points in places where they can have incursions in the south across the border, but they have been really stopped. And what was impressive about this was that these are in places that have villages that have been totally destroyed. The natural cover has been razed to the ground, vegetation, buildings, and so on, scorched earth, and that they the resistance could have actually used that as a scorched earth policy themselves to let the Israelis come into the zone that they've completely eradicated everything, and then when they have no cover, attack them, bombard them with missiles and so on. But that they've chosen to do something rather interesting, which is a bit of a gamble. It increases the possibility of losses, but they're fighting them directly one-on-one in that zone to prevent them from really crossing the border. And I think the reason why is because there must be some both military and political value to this. One is, if they can stop them, it really says to the Israelis, there's just no chance. It's not even, the kind of asymmetrical insurgency. We will just stop you dead in your tracks. Yes, the Nasrallah, you will come walking and you will vertical and you will go out horizontal. And that is important to reassert that. And the other one is, I think, given what Amal Saad and others have been talking about the internal political situation, I think there is an important point here, because I'm now coming to realize that that's the only reason why Hezbollah accepted the ceasefire. It wasn't because of battlefield, conditions. They did it because they had a problem, maintaining unity within Lebanon. So what I'm wondering is if this is a way of establishing that they are the only force that is capable not just of fighting the Israelis, but of defending the sovereignty and the territory of Lebanon, and that they are going to make a point of, we are not going to, to the extent that we are capable, we are not going to let them take any Lebanese territory whatsoever, even if tactically you could bring them in and then use that to destroy them. So I'm wondering what you all think about that.
Well, we talked about strategic patience, from strategic patience to strategic victory being the title of today's episode. And it's very important to understand that this is the moment. Like, there is no other force in Lebanon. Even the Lebanese army is like 60 or 70% Shia, right? Mm-hmm. So the Zionists might have captured the Lebanese government for, it hasn't been a government since 1973 or something. So it doesn't actually...
It's the Lebanese Authority. It's like the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah, it's the Lebanese... It's turned into the Lebanese Authority, but it doesn't even have the police of the Lebanese Authority. It can't even call the Zionists to, back them up when things get hot. And so there is no real inside danger, and the population of Lebanon, because the Zionists can't stop themselves from killing civilians, they're again doing this thing in which they are solidifying the population around the resistance. And, and you see the empire retreat, it's the empire of lies, but those lies, they're like mainlining lies now. They are like smoking lies, as if, it was out of a crack pipe. 450,000, you're going to put 450,000 Zionist baby killers who, have never faced a real fighter in their life, can only kill children and women and do videos dressed up in female underwear. you're going to put where are you going to find them? They don't even have that. They are all, half of them are PTSD out of existence. The other half is probably trying to forget or to brag on some kind of weird combination of weak sourced bad quality ecstasy or what have you. They don't have the 450,000. These people are lying all the time. Like they're like Trump. It's all a lie, and they need to make their lies bigger and bigger. They're literally the little boy, caught lying, who's trying to get out of it by making the most extraordinary, the most crazy lies possible. And one day, this whole bubble of lie, just like the AI bubble, just like the mother of all bubbles, that is the US economy, will collapse in on itself. And it's the Zionists themselves, the squatters themselves, that will actually sort the Zionists. Justin says Iran can only be defeated by Iran. I'll go further. The Zionist entity will be defeated by the squatters, because the walls are closing in. You're in your bunker all day, and you can't say what you see. You can't film what you see. And all you have is a government that says, nothing to see, everything is fine, we're the greatest ever, we have 450,000 on this border, we're going to do this and do that and the other thing, and we have all the interceptors in the world where you can't even see any in the sky. And at one point, this is all going to fall in on itself. And until then, they will come out with the most extraordinary lies you ever saw. Maybe there are 3 Netanyahu's, because they knew about this and they actually created 3. This way you can kill 2 of them and there still be one to go around making AI videos until...
3 Netanyahu's with 36 fingers. About like the Lebanese situation, there's this joke on the internet. It's by this guy Mike Primavera. He says, my neighbor told me coyotes keep eating his outdoor cats. So I asked how many cats he has, and he said he just goes to the shelter and gets a new cat afterwards. So I said it sounds like he's just feeding shelter cats to coyotes, and then his daughter started crying. Like, they've been saying they're going to eliminate Hezbollah for so long and throwing so many conscripts against it. And at some point, the Israeli population is going to be like, you're just feeding our kids to Hezbollah. That's what so Hezbollah it's like they keep like creating Stalingrad and trying to walk through it again and then getting smoked all over again. So you have to also remember that Israel has less air cover now in Lebanon because their air power is bombing everybody else. And Hezbollah has more. So Hezbollah has some cover from Iran, and Hezbollah, I was looking at their latest reports from yesterday, and they're still penetrating 50 kilometers deep, and they have better rocket cover than before. And Israel has less air defenses than before. So in every way they're weaker, and they're just opening up. So every war, so they say you can't win any war through the air. So Iran can't actually defeat Israel through the air. But the ground troops are Hezbollah and Hamas and PLFP and so on. The ground troops are already there, and they're already knocking on the door. And then we talk about this battle of societies, right? Like I know from Sri Lanka, as in we've gone through like different types of collapse. The people that have money and the people that have capability will get out. And I've heard something about Israel where there's only maybe about 300,000 people that sort of run the economy. And those people are, dual passports. They would have gotten out before, or they're getting out now. So Israel is steadily degrading whatever keeps that place functioning as a society. And I think Iran is running the clock, Hezbollah is running the clock, Hamas is running the clock. They know that once America pulls out, that society, not just militarily, but socially, cannot stand on its own. And the fact that their leadership does not offer themselves up to martyrdom, the fact that their leadership hides amongst them, that the Israeli military command is in a civilian area, that they do hide under hospitals, that everything they accuse the resistance of doing, that they do, that leadership, once it doesn't have the outside support, and you see this in every sort of colonial relationship. In Sri Lanka, in India, you get some elite who's pretty horrible, who ties up with whoever the colonizer is. For us, we'd switch from the Portuguese to the Dutch to the British. But the minute those guys pull out, those elites are not presiding over a functioning society, and that collapses. And what I can tell you in So what I think would happen is, just based on Sri Lanka's experience, once they get power cuts of more than, say, 6 hours a day. I remember when we had a 12-hour power cut, the next day everybody was in the street. And of that government, I don't think, we only had elections about 2 years later, but I don't think anybody survived from that government, as in like not dead, but nobody got re-elected. And then we elected a communist government. We're still under IMF. Like nobody from the Israeli ruling elite, if you get power cuts for more than 6 hours, that thing's going to go down. These people are not used to hardship.
Yeah. I think also another interesting component from Amal Saad that parallels what we were just discussing in a way when it came to Iran and this decapitation, assassination type of military approach is that they're creating a Hezbollah. They spent all this time obsessing about Hezbollah. Well, of course they were obsessing about Iran, but it wasn't realistic to, really try anything against them until they could really get the United States involved. And of course, that was the, principal objective of 40 years of statecraft and a career on the part of Milikowski, since we should, adopt Benji's tradition of using his real Polish
name.
But they did face, Hezbollah closely. There was 18 years or so of occupation of southern Lebanon, which is the birth of Hezbollah, as in Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon. And so they have built up so much of a knowledge base, they thought, intelligence, experience, a lot of it very bad, because of course it was Hezbollah that forced them out in, what was it, 2000. But what's happened with the decapitation strikes is that Hezbollah has, according to Amal Saad, I think this is interesting analysis, changed its organization in significant ways to go back to a kind of insurgency from what it had started to become, which was like almost like an army, right, that controlled the territory of southern Lebanon. They've gone back down to this kind of cell structure where you may know that top level political leadership and go ahead and assassinate them, but they are now separated from the real military command structure that is on a much more local, small, cellular, style organization, which means that they're less capable of penetration. They don't emerge on the surface. They're all underground, and that this has meant that Israel doesn't actually know the enemy that they're fighting, right? And that they just sort of appear. This is something Laith was saying, is that they like appear from like under the ground, almost. It's like, and that there's so many sites that they still had, that there was a lot that they handed over, to UNIFIL and the Lebanese army in the south after the ceasefire. But it's clear that there were many, many other storehouses of, missiles and people and everything that was still kept in reserve. And she called it regenerative deterrence, is what they are developing, is a different kind of deterrence, which isn't to prevent the attack from coming in the first place, since that hasn't completely worked. That hasn't been possible. But to develop a different kind of deterrence, which is what you were saying before, Indi, is that you can knock out all these missiles, but then they will make more. They have the production capacity underground where they're storing the missiles. They have the factories for making these things underground, protected from US bombardment, US and Israeli bombardment. And so the idea with regenerative deterrence is to show that no matter what you do, the resistance can come back and regenerate. And so it's not killable. And as a result, the cost that you will have to pay is so high that it then, creates its own kind of deterrence in a new key. And I thought that was a very interesting idea that really paralleled the two cases that we've been looking at, both Lebanon and Iran.
Yeah. There's a beautiful... There was a beautiful video put out by the Iranians, sorry, Indi, very short, of Iranian women actually assembling a missile. I don't know if you saw that, the assembly line of a missile, and it's you know, today's Rosie the Riveter, right? We can do it, sisters, and you see them all around the missile actually assembling it.
Now that's woman life freedom.
That's woman life freedom.
That really is. You know? Yeah. Well, speaking of women, you know, I thought this was interesting. If we're ready to move on, you know, from Lebanon, but there was an interesting.
Can I make a little ego-centered, self-centered point from the chat? Somebody said, you know, I had the misfortune of sharing a first name with Milikovsky, and I used. As a child, I remember how I used to think, oh my God, you know, I could have, because Benjamin was a very uncommon name and people would make fun of it because it was just uncommon. This is what kids do, right? And I used to console myself by going, well, at least I'm not called Adolf, right? But now I think the first name Benjamin is not long for this world. Brothers and sisters, it's Benji anyway, by the way, not Bibi, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I wanted to, you know, speaking of women, you know, I saw this video, and it kind of relates to the point I was making about Larijani's last major kind of diplomatic move, which was this declaration articulating to Muslim countries, rulers, you know, leaders of Muslim countries, their obligations to the Ummah, you know, and to supporting Iran and realigning themselves against U.S. empire and stop being compradors, but to actually fulfill you know, these kinds of obligations. So it was kind of a, you know, a call, a diplomatic sort of proposal put out to shame, you know, the Muslim rulers for not doing enough in this moment, but also for the last 2.5 years of the genocide, right? And so he was really calling them out. And I think that, as I said before, has to be one of the deep concerns about his potential effectiveness is, you know, bringing together, undermining the coalition that the empire is trying to put together to do a lot of the dirty work and perhaps even ground troops and so on that they don't want to do for themselves, to try and have colonial troops like in the, you know, earlier 20th and 19th and 20th centuries when Europe used so many colonial troops to fight their own wars. And that reminded me of this, which is women in Fati.
حط الكوفية عالراس وخنجر عالخاصور والله يا أقصى عاقدنا العازم للناصور شربنا الشهادة بنفرد من النيل بماصور كل بيت بشيخ الجراح لا إلنا قاصور.
Okay, so that, you know, we'll just let it keep flowing. This is in Fatih Jami, Fatih Mosque in a conservative quarter of Istanbul, where they're doing the night prayers during Ramadan after, you know, breaking the fast and doing the sunset prayers. You know, people have a meal, and for the night prayers, there are special additional prayers that are done, and people go, especially in these last 10 days, to the mosque, and you can see the mosque is packed. This is a huge mosque built by, you know, Fatih Mehmet, the conqueror. And so it dates from the middle of the, well, kind of from the middle late part of the 15th century. And what they're doing is they're taking their headscarves, okay, and they're throwing them from the women's section up in this veranda above, and also from, you know, in sections that are behind this main kind of chamber, and they're throwing their hijabs into the men's section, of the prayers. And apparently what they're doing is they're saying, you know, Al-Aqsa, because Al-Aqsa, the worshipers are not currently allowed to go into Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. The Israeli authorities have shut down not only Al-Aqsa, but also the Holy Sepulchre for like almost the first time you can think of in living memory and living history.
First time, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're, you know, saying that because Al-Aqsa is not being defended, you know, we need, you know, it's gendered. It's like this is their response within, you know, kind of patriarchy is you aren't men. Like, so you should wear the hijab. Okay. You take the hijab, you wear it because you're not acting like men in the sense of defending the community and fulfilling your obligations, you know? And so they're shaming them. They're shaming their brothers, their husbands, their sons, you know, and saying you have to do something about this. And I don't remember this happening earlier in the 2.5 years of genocide. This is one of these moments that seems to me is being opened up by Iran's resistance and its absolute solidarity with Al-Quds Day just last Friday, being observed in dramatic fashion while bombs are falling on people. They are out there defiant, demonstrating their solidarity with the people of Palestine, and the end game for them is Al-Quds, as we were talking about in a previous episode. This has, it seems to me, charged the atmosphere of Palestine solidarity within Muslim countries with renewed significance. I just have to be, I'm so impressed by these women, you know, recognizing what solidarity is and trying to intervene in a particularly interesting way in these last days of Ramadan at these prayers, you know, where people are spending time, you know, trying to get the last spiritual benefits of this long month of fasting in these special night prayers. These women are saying, what good is this, in a way, you focusing on this spiritual life, if it's not going to lead to you having solidarity and doing something in this world for your brothers and sisters in Palestine? And if you really, care about this religion and all of that, then what about defending one of its major holy places? And so,
and it's very interesting because there was a sense, strategically speaking, again, I've had the sense that the Jewish identity won't survive Zionism. They already exterminated the Jewish working class during the Second World War. And now this is the end of the Jewish identity. Maybe the religion will go the way of other religions before. But on the other side of the equation, you see, I think it will lead, and I'm no religion scholar, but my sense is that it will lead to a renewal of the Ummah or the Muslim identity, because it's been so debased. I mean, it's basically been, turned into a servant of Zionism, and that is no way to live. And because Zionism is not long for this world, I think it will lead to a very strong renewal of the Muslim identity, the Sunni identity. And this is why I think also that will be part of the things that will drive the total erasure of the Sykes, Pico came last minute, borders. I found the video, if you can share it, because I think it would be great to watch it. One of the best agitprop videos of Hamas I ever saw was when they put out this film of manufacturing the Gol sniper rifle in the tunnels. That was such a powerful piece of agitprop, because it showed that these people had it all. They could do it all from their own resources. And this video of the women assembling the missile is also a really brilliant piece of agitprop, because it cuts, right through all that nonsense about Iran being the most patriarchal country in the world that oppresses women, keeps them down. Remember, I quoted before, 60% of the engineers who actually dreamt up those missiles are women, and it turns out a very large proportion of the people who lovingly assemble them so that they can stand up, self-determine, and be sovereign also are women. So I think you can probably share it from down there. Have a go.
Okay, you've thrown. Where have you put it?
I've put it in my thing. You managed to share things from me before. Go ahead.
Why you guys?
Oh, great. Yeah, there it is.
Why you guys? Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, there they are. One more time.
Women's liberation in action, brothers and sisters.
So based on what Adnan shared, there's this line in the Quran which I often think of. It says, they prefer to be with the women who remain behind at home. Their hearts are sealed, and so they do not understand. And so I think about it during Ramadan a lot, right? I think about, like, what if I was Emirati? I would be like, this is talking directly to me, and I'm going to hell. And I would be, like, scared. Because here's another line. It says, some of the desert Arabs, too, came to make excuses, asking to be granted exemption. Those who lied to God and his messenger stayed behind at home. Those who denied the truth among them will be afflicted with a painful chastisement. It's like... And it also says the desert Arabs are more stubborn in their denial of the truth and hypocrisy and are the least likely to be aware of the limits to which God revealed to his messenger. God is all-knowing and wise. When I read that, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm doing bad. But if I was Emirati, I'd be like, I am 100% doing bad. And this is talking directly to me. Because it's very clear in the Quran, I mean, we talk about La Rajani, that the world of this life, wealth, children, I saw an image of just his, like, shabby coat and so on, that this is but a passing fancy. I think it's called a sport or like a pastime, and it's like a blink of an eye. And that in the afterlife, you're going to get roasted for the evil you did. And so people are like, oh, is the afterlife real or not? I think that's somewhat irrelevant. The question is, what kind of life does it make you live now?
Yes.
And the life, you could look at the lives of the people who sacrifice, and then you look at the lives of the people who are doing evil, and you can see the difference that faith makes in a person's life. And
yeah. Well, speaking of faith, and Sasha, shout out to you, Sasha. There's also something spiritual I picked up on about indigenous weapons production, a closer relationship, so there's
and there's something disgusting about imperial weapons production, because I hate using the word tomahawk, because that's something they stole from genocide people, or Apache helicopter. So if they survive,
they can't help
they won't.
Yeah.
No, if they survive, they'll have a shaheed. They'll have like a Khomeini missile or something if they ever get through this, which they won't.
Yeah. So we saw Roshin the Riveter. That's the new. Okay. So
Roshin the Riveter, classic. Yes.
Yeah. But also there was something, this is also related to, the previous discussion about Al-Aqsa, being the object of stimulus here for these women shaming, the men. Sasha actually had another comment here, saw through Jiang when he said Al-Quds was going to be destroyed in his predictions. Why do people not factor resistance into their predictions? And of course, he's referring, I would say, principally not even just to this one particular commenter who gets a lot of attention, but also the polemics or the propagandistic supposed threats and warnings. Oh, it's terrible, this could happen, and Iran's actual calling out of false flag.
Larijani's
did, yes,
last tweets. Yeah.
One of some of his last tweets were about be aware of attempts to try and use the war for destruction or damage to Al-Aqsa as part of messianic Jewish appropriation of the holy sites. And I have to say, it's also interesting. I had some thoughts about this because in addition to these threats to Al-Aqsa, and also preventing worshipers from going in the last 10 days. And if you recall, this is not the first time that this has happened. The last several years, there have been attempts to limit the number of people who had access, but then also there were occasions where there were like invasions of the Al-Aqsa sanctuary, and people in the mosque who were performing seclusion for the last 10 days, which is a common practice called i'tikaf, the last 10 days of Ramadan, to stay those 10 days fasting, praying, meditating in the mosque, were attacked, by hooligans, thugs, Zionist thugs who came in and violated the sanctity of the holy shrine, and also abused and beat and maimed worshipers there. But they've also done this for the Holy Sepulchre, as we were just mentioning. And I just wanted to share this as well.
As you do that, shout out to Sasha. Thanks for being in the chat. People miss you. Come back to
is this our
whenever you
Sasha?
want. Yes, it's our Sasha.
Oh, hi, Sasha.
It's
Sasha.
RIF Sasha, co-founder, RIF co-founder Sasha.
That's right.
Love you, brother.
This is, a picture of inside the Holy Sepulchre during the Easter fire ceremony. Okay, I'm not going to tell you all about it. Have been researching a major article and a book eventually about this history of the Holy Fire miracle, because it's so fascinating as an aspect of popular interreligious Mediterranean culture. And it's all about religious sovereignty, right? It's really all about religious sovereignty. And what we have is, firstly, I wondered, what do the the Christian Zionist fascists have to say about the fact that, the Holy Sepulchre is shut down, and access, we will see this is Lent. Okay, it's a time when there would be a lot of services, and of course we're getting close to Easter in just a few more weeks. What do these Christian Zionists have to say about the rights of Christians in Palestine, for whom this is their church, and of course also for the global Christian community that often comes and it tries to attend?
I think Christian Zionism is the new SNM, isn't it?
But that's starting. You can see it starting to break down. I mean, I think that's a big reason why Israel wanted to go all out now, because they know their support is fracturing. So Tucker Carlson had some interview with like a Christian nun, and he's been hammering. I mean, he's obviously just trying to dump this all on the Jews and move on to killing brown people differently. But he's been hammering away at the fact that Christians are not actually safe in Israel, and closing the Holy Sepulchre, I think, for the first time is a major thing. I was just at a relative's house and they're Christian, and then they had a Torah with the Star of David because they're Christian. Even like Christians in India who I know, they still have that connection to Israel. But that's also based on them being able to travel there and sort of not get spit on. And that's falling apart. You can see that the whole Israeli coalition, they knew that this is their last gasp. This is their last shot. It seems, so my wife always asks, like, this just seems stupid. Like, why would they attack Iran? Why would they do this? I was like, well, this is it's less stupid than doing it in 5 years, or it's less stupid than doing it in 2 years. I think that's the only way they see it. And I think they also believe in some way.
I think you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
They went from, I think the Christians went from 10% to 2% of the population in occupied Palestine.
Yes. I mean, there's obviously been a big decline in numbers. But in terms of what you were just saying, Indi, I definitely think that is the case, and that in some ways the whole Greater Israel project being pursued aggressively is to try and plan for the post-US patronage world, right? Like, if the US, as Colonel McGregor says, we have to withdraw back to our own hemisphere and be the hegemon there, whatever the conditions of the US retreat from the Middle East, either sent packing, decolonizing, destroying their bases, and so on, or that they themselves feel that they need to make a different strategic choice because the Kagans of the world have themselves already started to pull back and say, well, they want to put distance between themselves and Israel because they're worried about the backlash politically in the United States of having been such public pro-war Israel supporters as neocons for the last several decades, with the Iraq War and so on. But also because there will be a rise, especially from the far right, of anti-Semitism, and that's because so suddenly now Kagan is going to appreciate, Kagan and Bill Kristol, whom he was having this conversation with, two arch neocons, suddenly now they're going to have to invest in the idea of the difference between Israel and Judaism, and that you can criticize Israel and it doesn't mean that it's anti-Semitic. Like they have to now uphold that division because they are on the line. There's going to be a backlash, and if you confuse or connect those two, then people like them are going to be objects of bigotry, at least political. They'll be politically in the wilderness. If not, there will be rising tides of bigotry and prejudice expressing itself in the fascistic culture that has been created in the imperial core. And so I completely agree that Israel itself is also departing in its sense that maybe the US isn't going to be there all the time. So what we have to do is get them to destroy the other major competitors. And that's why Naftali Bennett is saying, oh, and then imagining that Iran will happen quickly and will be over, was already announcing, oh, and then Turkey will be the new Iran. It's like, okay, we want to, as quickly as possible, have the US support to reduce, destroy, de-develop all of the other potentially competing states, and instead act as the dominant force, because maybe the US won't be there and it'll be all about regional politics, and they want to be positioned to be that dominant force.
You talk about Kagan and those guys trying to sort of reestablish that line between Zionist and sort of Jewish, and I think it's almost too late for that. Yeah. I think there's that saying that a religion is an old cult, but I think Judaism is a religion that has become a cult. Zionism used to be a sort of fringe thing within Judaism, but it has devoured the whole thing. People talk so within the main, I think within Israel, the support is 95% for the war. And within the diaspora, it's 90%. We spent my entire adult life talking about terrorism and extremism in the Muslim community, and it never reached that level. I mean, the Muslim communities are also much more diverse. You're talking more about Indonesia and India than Arabs. But extremism in the Muslim community never reached above any, I'd be making up percentages, but it certainly wasn't 90%. I'd say it was 2 or 3. And they're just that it's become deeply corrupted. Now, look, anti-Semitism is not my problem. So that's a European thing. It's to me, it's a racist category of racism. It's you have racism, but then there's special racism amongst white people, and that's more serious. And you can lose your job for that. But say whatever you want about Muslims and black people, that's fine.
Yes.
But anti-Semitism, that's the real racism. I mean, I don't really care about it. But I do. I was reading this history, sponsored by Rothschilds actually, about court Jews, and they were talking about this guy Judd Suss, who I think the Nazis made a movie out of. And he was sort of basically rose to prime minister in some statedom. And I'm scared because Adnan is here, probably knows about this. But he rose to a very high level, and then he was very publicly called out and executed. And there's lithographs of everyone gathering for his hanging. And then there were also lots of stories, probably true, about him basically abusing white women, or at least being sexually licentious with a lot of women. And to me, it almost parallels Epstein, what's happening. And you got to remember that the Epstein stuff is released by the state. It's not like a leak, and that with JFK they could just keep stuff hidden forever. So Epstein to me is a fall guy, because for me Epstein, he's nothing. He's actually just Les Wexner's bagman. But they're setting up, I think consciously, Jews to be the fall guys for the white empire. And Israel to be the fall guy. And even in the comments online, you have to constantly repeat to people, well, no, it's not. People are oh, this is not us. I'm no, this is you. This is you too. This is still you. And they're going to try and squirrel out of it. And you can see the groundwork being laid. I'm surprised to see it coming from Kagan and Crystal now, but you've seen the groundwork being laid through like Thomas Massey and Tucker Carlson, and they're getting ready to cut bait on Israel. And I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah, maybe not that surprising, because those guys are consummate insiders, and so they're always trying to kind of run the inside track. But it's a very important straw in the wind that they would be saying this. They're jumping onto the the Zionist entity is an albatross around our neck bandwagon, and it really behooves us to not climb on that bandwagon. I mean, I understand people who do it. I understand people, who go, yeah, it's all the Zog and everything, and going after Jewish supremacy, which is a real thing and should be targeted as well. But I don't think we are doing ourselves or the movement a service by just, giving white empire this way out. The good news, brothers and sisters, is it won't actually take it. I don't think it is in a position that it can do anything strategically smart. What we are seeing is that absolutely everything it does is a strategic mistake. This is, and it's a thing, I raised it earlier, and maybe we can discuss it later. Carl Jha said it today on the internet. He said, I think the Chinese misunderestimated just how stupid the imperial stewards have become, just how ignorant and supremacist. And in a way, they failed in their Sun Tzu, because they really imagine that they have equals across the aisle, when in fact they have people who are so high on their supremacy that they have literally taken leave of their senses. Like, they have retreated into this world in which they truly believe that narratives creates reality, and they've just lost the plot, because it's always a dialectic, of course, between the observer and what is being observed, between the discourse and the material conditions of life. And truly, the West has lost that. Justin pointed it out, and Lo Surdo has a lot to say about that, how the Nietzschean side of Western ideology, which is really the Zionist project, is its most perfect embodiment, has made those people totally lose track that, you just cannot. Was it Larijani? Arakshi said, one of the guys said, we have to remind people in the US and, the West and the imperialists that you cannot win a war on Twitter. The only war you can win on Twitter is the shitpost war, because you pierce their ego. But of course you can't, defeat a missile on Twitter, but you can only defeat lies. And the only guys who are lying are them. And this is why, by the way, there's many, many reasons why the resistance, why the anti-colonial side, why the side of morality and life doesn't lie, but the other guys cannot tell the truth except to cover another lie. So that's why they're so weak narratively. This is why, by the way, all the AI slop that is produced, the greatest one is produced by Iran and the resistance, and all the AI that the empire produces is absolute garbage and has no impact other than make people literally laugh it out of the room. And just look at the saga with the recent Milikovsky videos.
There's about overestimating the Americans. There's this joke where the Iranian president at the time, Khatami, he was on an interview, and he says he's Alex de Tocqueville, which I'm sure most Americans have read. Like, obviously not. Right?
Alex the what? Oh, he's an NBA player, right? Yeah. They can't beat Magic Johnson, is what I think.
He put up a triple-double a couple nights ago.
Yeah. So
they wouldn't
Justin
know. They'd
Podur
be
is
like,
back. So now we
we should get him
we
back.
can finally
Wait.
leave, because we were just holding the fort for.
But there's some. Is he commenting? I think there's some comments I want to address. Is someone is saying, Kubsa is saying, I get what you're saying about white empire, but Israel is its wannabe. It's not innocent. Yeah, no one's saying they're innocent, but it's like, why get mad at the fist? You got to get mad at the whole body.
Yeah.
To me, I actually don't really make a distinction between Israel and America, and even like the UAE. I think these are irrelevant distinctions. It's like Wales and England having different football teams. It's like irrelevant.
But I'm totally with our Palestinian brothers and sisters who have been exterminated by people who say we are the Jews for 100 or more years, saying, well,
no, there's something deeply rotten within that culture. You can point that out. There's something deeply rotten within that culture. I've had a lot of Jewish friends. And in Montreal, like I lived in Montreal. If you speak English, you end up like hanging out with a lot of Jews.
So you're not racist because you have Jewish friends, right?
But the extremism in that community has become mainstream, and to my chagrin, I think it was mainstream at the time.
It was.
Yeah.
I remember just when October the 7th happened, I was friends with this very liberal Zionist JVP and all the rest of it, and we were good friends, I have to say. And we were always, talking about giving money to B'Tselem and this and that and the two states, and if we could have that. And for a while, I dropped one state, and I thought, the two state could happen. I did that. And immediately after October the 7th, he wrote to me and he said, don't you think Israel has a right to exist? And I replied, no, states don't have a right. There are no states in the world that have rights to exist. Humans, living things have a right to exist, but no states. And that was the end of our correspondence, brothers and sisters. And but I don't know how much longer we have.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I've prepared 2 more videos.
I want to use the globe for something.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So right now, look, like this is blocked here, right? So the effects, we're getting it here, and it's spreading out to Bangladesh and Thailand. Okay, but you guys are crazy if you think it's going to stay contained here. I actually don't know what's happening in Africa. I should check. But Europe is going to get it. So Europe. What you have with this war is America basically drew a line across, and I mean the whole world war, right? So with Ukraine, they cut a line across here. So European flights have not been able to fly across there, and they have not been able to get energy across there. So then they were forced to either get energy from the US, which actually doesn't have the right amount and the right stuff, and they were getting it through here. Through Qatar, they were getting a lot of natural gas. Now that's going to be cut off. Now, the next domino that's just waiting to drop is Ansar Allah cutting off the Red Sea, and then like everything will shit. Like everything will shut down. But I'm telling you this, right now there's a huge spread between prices of oil on paper and actual barrels of oil. Actual barrels of oil are trading at like 150, but for some reason, like oil on paper is trading at I think 100 or something. And this is all bullshit. Like they're trying to financialize their way out of a real physical problem. Because this isn't just 20% of oil, it's 20% of the most important stuff. For us, it's cooking gas and then diesel and petrol, which is, I don't know if you're familiar, I've run out of fuel, our country has run out of fuel before, and all of your stuff will shut down. Your schools will shut down, your factories will shut down, everything will shut down. Your lights will go out, you will be hot if you're in a hot country, you will be cold if you're in a cold country. And just think about how much, you have no idea how much energy affects everything. And this is not going to stay constrained on the map. And it's just a timing difference. So I would also advise you personally to, I don't know what it is in your life. For us, we need a lot of battery powered stuff, and you need stuff electrified. And things that can resist not having power for 6-7 hours at a time. But those things, while they may be available now, they will not be available in 2 to 3 weeks, or let's say a month. So I would just say personally, you need to get prepared. In Sri Lanka, everybody's used to this by now.
Wow. And I have a bee in my bonnet about people thinking they know the actual, we can see the strategy, we can understand it, we can promote it, legitimize it. But, a lot of people on Twitter speak as if they've actually have been able to read the strategic plans of both sides, and then they do the meme, they go Robin, the resistance should, and Batman slaps. But actually, and I have to say, I've finally been able to put my hands on a verified Iranian strategic plan. So like this is absolute exclusive stuff. No one else knows about this, and please don't tweet about it, because if the US sees it, well, actually the plan is so brilliant that even if they see it, there's nothing they can do about it. Can you play the first video down there? Can you see it, brother?
Oh, brilliant.
There you go, brothers. So this is the actual strategic plan of the headquarters of Iran. And now you know why they can kill all the leaders. The plan will go according to the plan. Because what Brother Adnan calls the tyranny of geography. I don't like the word tyranny of geography because it's them, playing victims again because of the material reality of life. It has material qualities, not just
maybe it's like the righteousness of geography or something.
Yeah,
of righteousness.
Geography writing.
I love that. Yes.
But I like that it's like ironic twist of their own bemoaning that the geography is so tyrannical. We don't have all the good stuff. We have to go over there to get it. So.
Everything's against them. The whole world is against them. The crybabies, they've been genociding, raping, and exploiting and extracting for 500 years, but they still find ways to narrate their stories in which
but they're going to lose this.
They're the victims.
So it's like I was saying at the beginning, like Iran just has to manipulate one number, not the whole media, not every talk show, not Hollywood. They just have to manipulate the gas price. Once it gets above a certain price, this whole place is going to shit. And I saw a graph once which showed the prices in the US since the 1980s, and the prices of everything, education, housing, healthcare, that's all skyrocketed. The only things that stayed affordable were consumer goods. So essentially, the only things that stayed stable were from the Chinese economy. So they've cut that off also. Trump has laid, if you talk about planning, our man inside has actually done a lot of planning to destabilize America from the inside. The tariff shocks, those still haven't really been priced in. Our
man inside being Abu Naranja.
Abu Naranja, sorry. Yeah, so all of the damage he's done before, he somehow seemed to get away with it, doing crazy stuff, like cutting off everybody in the world from really trading with you, increasing prices. That's all just sitting there waiting for some straw to break these idiot camel traders' backs that they start freaking out, and then it reflects in the one place they care about, the stock market. And that's coming. Even the AI bubble is intimately tied to energy. It's really an energy hustle. And that's, I can't wait for it to blow up, but it's all going to blow up.
Yeah. And speaking of, I have one last thing. Maybe we can have it to conclude, because I want, it's funny, everything they've created to shitify the world is turning against them. By the way, AI dystopia is just a psyop. I have an article about it if you want to read it on my Substack. But I think, I wasn't the last to diss all those AI videos because they were so bad, but actually AI videos were put on this earth by the creator, if there is one, so that Iran could make the best AI videos in the history of psychological warfare. And I've got one there, but maybe we keep it to last to conclude our episode, unless you've got something even more inspiring than that video to play.
I do have something but I can use it for another one, because it's going to be relevant for every episode.
Okay. Whereas this one is kind of topical in many ways. So
let's take a look.
Before that, maybe we can conclude where we're. Oh yeah, no, you run the show. Go ahead.
No, that's a good idea. If we have any final thoughts, and then we'll show the video.
My final thought is, I hope we've shown you, brothers and sisters, that we're not just on the way to strategic victory. Strategic victory is here for us to see, and it behooves us to get inspired by it, to amplify it, and to bring the good word to everyone around us and shit post them back to hell, because that's what these demons deserve.
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, I'm saddened by the loss of Ali Larijani, just as all the martyrs. But as Sheikh Salah said, I mean, I think it was him who said, or Sinwar, that like they don't want to die of a heart attack. What they fear is dying of a heart attack or a car accident. Yes. Like these men want to die fighting, and I think there's a better life for them, and I think they will get their reward.
A friend of mine, when others on a chat said, "Oh, Ali Larijani, rumors that he's been assassinated. I'm so upset," and he replied, "Be happy for him." It's what he would have wanted. Be happy for him. He's a martyr, which doesn't mean that we don't feel these losses, that we aren't human beings, all of us with lives and things that we treasure in this life. But what I've been trying to think in this context is the cases of these martyrs, the cases of people who are willing to risk their lives to show their defiance to the empire by coming out every night into the streets to resist, is that they're the ones who are truly living. They're truly living. They're doing something with this life. It may lead to them dying, but they're prepared for that. And that preparation is what allows them to truly grasp the meaning and benefit of life, and to be on the side of life. So we can't be too broken up by that. So that's an important point to remember. Also, I would just say, for my last kind of remark and comment, is that you still have a chance to get in on the Ramadan Samir Project fundraiser that we have been doing. I would like people to join me. I've made a small donation as well. You can too. You can do it even off the stream, though I like to have people do it and post and encourage others by doing so. But you can still do so for another few days while the Ramadan campaign remains open. I had put the link in the chat earlier. I think one time I may have put in the wrong. I put in my donation one, so I'm going to delete that one. But I have to find the link, and I'm putting it in again so that you have it. And I want to give you an update on where the campaign is now. So remember, I had said it was at 462 something, and it is now at 465. So it is getting much closer. That's basically about 3,000 pounds have come in. It's not all necessarily due to us and the wonderful people on this stream. There are other people who exist in the world, but I feel like there's been a boost, and I recognize some names from the chat. A lot of them are, of course, anonymous, but I know many of them were you, and I really appreciate that. And it's going to make a difference to people.
And I would like to give a shout out to the Resistance is Fertile community. If you can put the link, because somebody's asking, I sent it in the private chat. I agreed to host Small Gaza fundraisers 9 months ago, and it's grown to 5 now, with a new one recently. And together we've raised over $17,500 for people in Gaza, about 10,000 of which come directly from Resistance is Fertile community, especially the paid subscribers, because what happens if you're a paid subscriber is we ourselves add 50% to your donation and send everything to Gaza and publish the receipts. And I was able yesterday, for the end of Ramadan, to send quite a lot of money, and it makes them so happy. And as I said, those people are just amazing. Like, they come to me and they say, I have this friend who's destitute. Please open a new fundraiser to them when they know that it means that less money will come to their own fundraiser, if you know what I'm saying. And still they do it. They deserve our support. And Justin had the perfect sentence: please give until it hurts, at least a little bit. We can all do that. And please do it. And again, thank you so much for having been so generous for this past year. You know now for a fact that when you give to Gaza, you are part of the material resistance. You break away from this white supremacist delusion that everything is in the world of ideas, of words, or everything. It's always those two legs: narratives, systems of meaning, being self-determining, being a free person of the world, and materially supporting in every way we can the resistance. The only ways you should talk about on the internet are things like giving money to people who are resisting. But of course, there are many other material ways to support the resistance. And if that's what you do, you know exactly what to do.
And people who are interested, I see people are asking, where's the link for the fundraisers Benji is talking about? I'm just going to encourage everyone to go to the Resistance is Fertile Substack, and they will be able to find information about
every post as the fundraisers, but not just our fundraisers, because, like, you know, I push every fundraiser. Like, there's also Samir Project, there's also Lifeline for Gaza. It makes no sense for me to get all competitive and say, go for my fundraisers and not this other one. That's not the way to go. But yes, every post we have a list of fundraisers that you can give to, either mutual aid or individual fundraisers through Lifeline for Gaza, or, should you be so generous, one of the 5 ones that I've agreed to host.
Well, this is such a very wonderful, heartwarming comment from Onur D9C, who's been on a number of the comments for these episodes. That warms my heart, but it really is all of you. And we're doing it for the kind of community that we're building here. And we really treasure this opportunity that we've been having among ourselves, but also reading the comments, posting them, sometimes when we can, taking up issues or questions that you post. And so we really appreciate you, and also all that you are doing for people in your community, in your lives, and also for the generosity in these fundraisers that we've been working on. So why don't we, without further ado, conclude by watching our last video for the evening, a timely
فرزندان ملت ایران امسال بمبا میخوره کف ایفا، پر میشه اعلامیه فوتا روی دیوار، چهارشنبه سوری تل‌آویو آتیشه به یاد بچه‌های مینا. امسال بمبا میخوره کف ایفا، پر میشه اعلامیه فوتا روی دیوار، چهارشنبه سوری تل‌آویو آتیشه به یاد بچه‌های مینا. میگم میخوافت نکنم بریز خیابون، پهلویای کمی خالی شده جیواشون، هرچی میخوای داد بزن، جا طرف به منافع آتیش میزنیم تو پیتامون، دشمن هر کی پشت تو طول سگ دوید، پیچیده بوی پول بد جوری وری کاری میکنیم، بریم مثل اربابت ویدیو برسونیم با هوش مصنوعی. همه بچه‌ها جنگی شدن، سرا سنگین 1 کیلو اکلیل سرنج توش، زندگی پر پستی بلند ولی گندگوی جلو ما واسما بلند بوش، دست ما جا طرف میبینی از 58 و سینمون پلاک، شک دیده نمیشه به هیچی کرد، یاسین نمیخونیم تو گوش خرولا. تفریح امسال چهارشنبه، دشمن سوزی تو اسرائیل، تحریم امسال چهارشنبه، سپاه دنبالتونه مثل اسرائیل. امسال بمب میخوره کف ایفا، بر میشه اعلامیه فوتا روی دیوار، چهارشنبه سوری تل‌آویو آتیشه به یاد بچه‌های مینا. امسال بمب میخوره کف ایفا، بر میشه اعلامیه فوتا روی دیوار، چهارشنبه سوری تل‌آویو آتیشه به یاد بچه‌های مینا.
And wow.
What a hot video there. Boy,
that's what my son calls a banger, ladies and gentlemen. And one thing that there's this Consensus Objection Center, I've already said it, but I want to repeat it. In the US, the quotes they are getting most are referring to the children of the MENAP school.
Yeah.
The US soldiers don't want to go fight this war, and the number one reason they give is the sacrifice, the martyrdom of these children.
I heard that too. I saw that, and that actually really gives you hope in this world,
Yeah.
I have to say.
And this is why AI videos came into this world, precisely for this kind of bangers, right?
Yeah. Well, there's nothing that can top that Lego video. Really intense. So I want to leave you all with that and just wish you all peace with justice and solidarity to you all. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine, and swift victory to the free people of the world.
Ameen.
Amen.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.